Hey YouTube, I feel like it's been a while since I've done this. I just started a new job a couple weeks ago, yay me, so that's why I've been MIA. But now that I'm more or less settled in, I should get back to normal with uploads. So I wanted to do another testing coping methods video today, but I'm gonna go in a bit of a different direction with this one. So like I said, I just started a new job and got back to work after 6 months off. The reasons I took a break, let alone such a long one, are numerous and a little bit convoluted, but they all kind of tie in together. So I work in a pretty stressful customer service based and client oriented industry that I quite honestly stumbled into by accident. And I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, but have basically been in customer service my entire working career, from retail to legit phone customer support and everything in between to where I am now. So like I said, I've been in my current industry for about 10 years. I left my first job in it after 5 years because there were just no opportunities for growth, but a secondary reason was a lot of office bullying. Now, I don't want to say that I personally thought the bullying was okay, because I didn't, and it wasn't, and it never is. But it was also completely excused by management because I had gone to management. But truthfully, I even felt bullied by management at times. And even people in my personal life kept telling me, well, even if you change jobs, it'll just be the same thing somewhere else. So I guess in a sense, I was made to think it was normal. So the job I went to from there, I experienced what I now know to be harassment from another coworker. But again, at the time, I didn't realize it. I honestly thought we just didn't get along and it was nothing more than a minor office conflict. Not totally unusual. And for the most part, we don't get to choose who we work with and spend 8 hours of our day with. So not everyone we work with are people we're necessarily going to get along with. I tried to resolve it by either ignoring this person or explaining to them that their behavior was unwelcome, but it continued. And again, I didn't recognize it as harassment, so I didn't go to my boss or HR or anything thinking they would just tell me to work it out with them as the adults we were. But eventually it became too much and I left. Mentally and emotionally, I couldn't handle it anymore. Thing is, both bullying and harassment would negatively affect anyone's mental and emotional health. But I already have anxiety and borderline personality, so it probably had a worse effect on me. But because at the time I thought the bullying was normal and didn't recognize the harassment for what it was, I never sought treatment, counseling, therapy, anything like that. And I have to wonder whether it made my anxiety and BPD symptoms worse. I mean, it had to have. It got to the point at both places where I was not only anxious, but actually fearful of going into work, not knowing what would happen. And that anxiety and fear stayed with me. Even when I left, I was anxious and fearful to go into work at all. I didn't feel better going to a new job because the fear and anxiety was so intertwined with work rather than the offices or people, if that makes sense. So I find myself at another company. Same job, same industry, just a different company. Luckily, no bullying or harassment from coworkers this time, but I had new problems to deal with. One, we were so short-staffed that I was completely overworked from the get-go with no ability to get my head above water, metaphorically speaking. I was burning out fast. Two, the level of verbal abuse stemming from clients and customers was something I have never seen before or experienced in my 10 years in this industry or my entire working career in customer service. Now, if you've ever worked customer service, you're gonna have to deal with some difficult customers and maybe the occasional abusive customer. But this was more than the occasional difficult customer. This was like a nonstop rotation of downright verbally abusive customers. Honestly, it was traumatizing. Dealing with that level of verbal abuse on a daily basis was traumatizing. So at this point, I'm traumatized from being bullied and harassed, and now verbally abused, and I'm stressed out from being overworked and on the verge of a burnout. And I also hadn't had any time off, like vacation or a holiday, in over 3 years. So all of this took a huge toll on me, mentally, physically, emotionally. Literally everything suffered. I couldn't take care of myself. I was under so much stress. I was constantly worried about work when I came home from the day and terrified of what I'd walk into the next day. I wasn't eating. I was barely sleeping, and when I did sleep, I was having nightmares about work. My autoimmune conditions were flaring up, and I was in a near constant state of physical pain. I was drinking every day to deal with the stress, anxiety, and pain. And I don't just mean one drink to take the edge off. So it was around that time I wound up at my doctor's and got a medical leave of absence so I could take care of me. And I did just that, or I tried to. Right away, I started seeing a counselor to deal with the anxiety and some of the trauma that had built up from the bullying, harassment, and point blank years of verbal abuse stemming from working in customer service. But pretty quickly, I did realize that my BPD was a bigger issue and affecting me more, and I was advised to take a step back from my regular counselor in favor of BPD-specific therapy. Now, I had no problem with that since I didn't think I was going to overcome my anxiety or trauma if the BPD issues weren't taken care of anyways, and I didn't have the tools to cope. Plus, the therapy for borderline personality, dialectical behavioral therapy, say that 5 times fast, is supposed to be useful for dealing with PTSD and trauma anyways. So I've been going through BPD therapy, but my personal goal so far hasn't been to deal with the trauma, but rather learning how to manage or lessen my symptoms of BPD and better cope with it. And I've really only had a couple sessions with my therapist thus far, so even if it does ultimately help with the trauma, I am nowhere near that point yet. So that means that the bullying, harassment, and overall trauma I experienced hasn't been dealt with. And that was fine when I wasn't working. Well, maybe not fine, but it wasn't really affecting me because I wasn't in a situation where I was being triggered. But fast forward to now, and I had to go back to work. My medical leave ran out, and quite frankly, I ran out of money. Now, I didn't have to go back to the same employer. I didn't have to go back to the same job, and I didn't even have to go back to the same industry. But I didn't feel like I had a lot of options. I graduated high school, but I have no college or university education, and my entire working career has essentially been in customer service. When you break it down, my entire resume is customer service. So I don't feel like I have a lot of options open to me that aren't customer service. And I don't want to go and do retail or work at yet another call center because 1, triggering, and 2, I have a mortgage and bills to pay, and that ain't gonna happen on minimum wage, especially part-time minimum wage, because both my doctor and my therapist felt it was best I only go back to work on a part-time basis, and I feel it's best I only go back part-time because I will be going back to school in July. Now that's another story for another time, and if you want to hear it, let me know in the comments. But I can't go to school and work full-time. I thought about trying to find something else totally different and removed from what I am doing, preferably that isn't customer service based, but that would mean retraining for a new job and starting at entry-level pay at best for a job I may only be in for a year or 2 until I finish school. That doesn't make sense to me. So I figured the best option was to stay in my industry so I could at least negotiate a higher pay based on my experience, but on a part-time basis and scale back my responsibilities so I wouldn't be overwhelmed with the workload or in a position to deal with as many difficult or abusive clients. So that's what I did. So I went back to work a couple weeks ago. But almost immediately I was triggered and the trauma came to the surface, and I have not been dealing with it well. Unfortunately, my therapist had been on holidays. Now, I was finally able to have a session with her the other day, and even though I mentioned in a previous video that exercise for me isn't useful as a coping mechanism when I'm in the throes of anxiety for a few reasons, overall, I do find it calming and a way to blow off steam, and honestly, the gym is like my happy and safe place. I can just do my thing for an hour or 2 with my headphones in and not have to worry about other people, and I do find it oddly relaxing. So, instead of testing out a new coping method, my therapist's recommendation, and therefore my challenge to myself, is to go to the gym every day after work, the days I do work, and see if that helps me cope with the negative feelings and emotions I'm having instead of coming home and falling back into old habits, which will ultimately take me right back to square one. So So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shifts between now and next Friday. So I will be heading to the gym every day after work, and we'll see. Will it be sufficient to numb my emotions, or will I still come home and feel too stressed to eat, want to numb myself with alcohol, not sleep? I don't know. If you want to know, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any updates. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like and a share. Leave me a comment below to introduce yourself, say hey, ask me any questions, or leave suggestions for future videos. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.